Welcome, witnesses. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Witness. Can you hold on to this one? Before you do your testimony, you are going to take an oath by either swearing by the Holy Quran or making an affirmation. Which one do you want to do?
The Quran.
Are you going to swear or going to make an affirmation?
I'll swear.
You swear by the Holy Quran?
Yes.
Okay, in that case, you have to hold the Holy Quran and then repeat after me. What is your religion?
Islam.
What language do you wish to speak to do the testimony? In which language do you want to do your testimony?
English.
Correct. Do you wish to swear or make an affirmation?
Swear.
Okay, Madam Chair, the witness wishes to swear by the Holy Quran. Okay, Mr. Witness, please repeat after me by holding the Holy Quran. I, for the M. Jaite, do swear, I will speak the truth,
I will speak the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
So help me God.
You may be seated, please.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the witness has been sworn. Sit down. Can you hold on to this one? Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to this Commission of Inquiry into Local Government Councils and Related Matters.
Thank you.
What is your religion?
Islam.
What language do you wish to speak?
English.
Do you wish to swear by the Holy Quran or make an affirmation?
I'll make an affirmation.
Madam Chair, the witness wishes to make an affirmation. Okay. You repeat after me. I, Samba JB, your surname, Tambura, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please be seated. Madam Chair, the witness has been sworn.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good afternoon, Mr. Jete and Mr. Tambura. Welcome to this Commission of Inquiry into Local Government Councils. I will now hand you over to the councils for them to take you through. Thank you.
Good day, sirs. Can you please state your name for the record? So we will start with Mr. Jaite on my right, I think.
Thank you. My name is Fode Muhammad Jaite.
Very well. Please tell us what your occupation is.
I am the Director General of the Gambia Public Procurement Authority.
Good. Where do you live?
Manjai Kunda.
Since when have you been the director at GPPA?
Since 7th May 2022.
Okay. So you have given a statement before this commission. Is that correct?
Correct.
If you see the statement, will you be able to recognize it?
Sure. Yes.
Can you please see this document?
Yes.
Is that the document you're referring to?
Yes.
Can we have it back? Madam Chair and the Commissioners, we apply to tender the statement of the witness, Mr. Fode M. Jaite, dated the 15th day of May 2023 into evidence as an exhibit.
The witness statement of Mr. Fode M. Jaite, the Director General of Gambia Public Procurement Authority, which statement was recorded on the 15th of May 2023, is hereby admitted in evidence and marked as LGC/PMG/001.
As the Commission places. I will now turn on to the gentleman on my left. Please state your names for the record.
I am Samba JB Tambura.
Can you tell us your occupation?
I am the Director, Compliance and Procurement Practices, GPPA.
Where do you live, Mr. Tambura?
Mandinari.
Since when have you been the Director of Compliance and Procurement Practices at the GPPA?
April 2021.
You gave a statement to the Commission here, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If you see the statement, will you be able to recognize it?
Sure.
Please have a look at this document.
Yes.
Can we have the document, please?
Thank you.
Honorable Chairperson, we apply to tender the statement of the witness dated 6th day of July 2023, Mr. Samba J.B. Tambura, into evidence as an exhibit.
The witness statement of Mr. Samba J.B. Tambura, recorded on the 6th of July 2023, is hereby admitted in evidence and marked as LGC/SJBT/002.
As the Commission places. Madam Chair, may we respectfully apply to have the said exhibits 001 and 002 of Mr. Jaite and Mr. Sambora, respectively. The two statements, exhibits. Yeah. Now, I will start with you, Mr. Jaite. Can you tell the Commission your educational background?
I went to Latrikuna Sabiji Primary School, and then Nusrat High School, and then I did my ACCA, Chartered Certified Accountants at the UK, Module F. I also did a master's degree in an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. I also have a master's degree in public sector management.
Very well. Mr. Sambora, can you tell us your educational background as well?
Thank you. After the completion of my junior secondary school, I went to St. Augustine's Senior Secondary School, then to the Gambia College, University of the Gambia, then to the University of Rome, Tor Vergata for my master's in public procurement.
Thank you very much. Now, just for a start, since you are appearing as joint witnesses, we will hear the evidence of the Director General, Mr. Jaite, and in the event that you feel probably a question may be best answered by your Director of Compliance, and he may, with the permission of the commissioners, may step in to answer the questions. Do you understand that?
I do.
Very well. Now, you've told us you are the Director General of the Gambia Public Procurement Authority. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you became a director which year?
2022.
Now, what is the role or mandate of the GPPA?
The mandate of the authority, when I say authority, I mean GPPA, is to regulate procurement in this country.
Can you please speak louder a bit?
The mandate of the authority is to regulate procurement in the country and monitor compliance.
Is it in relation to only government institutions, public bodies, or across the board? Can you shed more light onto that?
It's public procurement, so it's government institutions and local government authorities.
Now, how do you execute this mandate? How does your office execute this mandate?
The mandate is executed by requiring the law, requiring all procuring organizations, procuring entities, to submit procurement to the authority for approval at each stage of the procurement process. And also, it is the mandate of the authority to conduct a compliance review of their activities at the end of each year.
Now, we will probably ask certain very basic questions, but since it's a public trial, and we probably will be using words that may not sync well with the public, I will ask you to probably explain some words that you're using right now. So to start with, when we talk about procurement, what does it mean?
Procurement is defined as the process of purchasing goods, services, and works regulated by a system of rules derived from state law. And the system of rules refers to the regulation, and the state law refers to the Gambia Public Procurement Act 2022 in this case.
And also there is a regulation, I believe, 2018, is that correct?
Yes, there was. But that regulation is now superseded by the 2023 draft regulation. Now,
before we proceed, why is it important to have procurement guidelines and rules and regulations with respect to our public offices in the country?
There are many reasons to it. Is to ensure that government institutions procure goods, services, works in such a way that is most cost-effective, timely, and delivers value for money, for taxpayers' money, and to ensure that they get all the factors of production, if you understand what I mean, in terms of, like I said, works, goods and services to do their operations.
So one of the reasons are value for money. Basically, the goods or services that are being paid for should worth the amount of money that the institution is paying for the service or the goods. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yes. And what would be the other?
Sorry, let me just.
Please. Yeah.
Sorry for interjecting. Mr. Jaite, you've just given your evidence that the procurement regulation of 2018 is superseded with a new draft.
Yes.
Has the draft been promulgated?
Yes, the draft has been completed, and the first validation was conducted, and we have concluded the new regulation this past Saturday, and we now want to submit it to the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, and also perhaps to the AG chambers. And the next step now is to have the final validation of the regulation, which we are working towards. But the regulation is complete.
So I will be correct to say that you are still working with the 2018 one, since this one has not been promulgated.
Correct.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so you explained that one of the important reasons is that you have value for money, right? What public institutions are paying for services or goods are actually what they are getting. Is that what you said?
Correct.
And then what are the other reasons as to why there need to be these rules or regulations or guidelines in relation to procurement in public service?
Well, to ensure that there is sanity, so that there are laws governing procurement, obviously, and to make sure that corruption is minimized, and to make sure that procurement goes the right way, in accordance with the law. In other words, is to observe the law.
When you say corruption is minimized, what do you mean when you say corruption is minimized? The reason why we are, like I indicated earlier, we are going through all of this procedure is to better understand what it means when we talk about procurement. You and I may understand it, but the lay person, you will agree with me, may not understand the whole nitty-gritties in relation to procurement. So tell us what you mean when you say corruption is minimized.
To make sure that the principles of procurement are observed, which are competition, transparency, openness, fairness, and as you said, value for money. These are the principles of procurement, and this is what the procurement law tries to make sure is implemented and is achieved.
You have highlighted that already in your first point, and your second reason is we need to have these regulations. We need to be on top of things in relation to procurement in government sectors or institutions, so that we minimize, or there's minimal corruption practices. Is that correct?
Yes, I did say that.
Can you explain further in what you mean by that?
I think I've already explained that. Like I said, is to make sure that the procurement follows the law. The rules that are set for procurement procedures is followed. And if that is not followed, obviously it will be open to misprocurement and corruption.
What are the possible, in your experience as the Director General, what are the possible areas of or types of corruption that you may have come across generally in relation to procurement activities that may happen in certain public places?
We do come sometimes across misprocurement where the steps and the rules are not followed, and that's what we are there to make sure it is followed. And this happens all the time in our work. That's our job to do. And when files come to us and due process is not followed, so we basically make sure that it is followed by writing back to the institution to follow the rules.
Does it happen in the area of overstating prices, for example, trying to secure certain form of contracts in a favorable supplier to get advantage in one way or the other?
I'm sure it could happen.
Yes. So again, you are the expert here. You are the one sitting down here. So when I ask the questions, I expect that you dilate more on some of these things so that we better understand some of the issues surrounding procurement in our public offices. Is that understood?
Sure.
Yes. So now, can you tell us the different types or methods of procurement as per the Act or regulation?
Direct procurement, indirect procurement, and services.
Can you take it one step at a time? Yes.
Direct procurement.
Direct
procurement.
Direct procurement.
Indirect procurement.
Indirect procurement.
And services.
And services.
Procurement, yes.
Can you discuss with us individually these three categories?
Yeah, I will pass.
Starting with
the chairman. With your permission, Madam Chair, I'll give it to the Director of Compliance and Procurement Practices to elaborate on that. Is that okay?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. I think the question was the types of procurement methods.
Yes.
Yes.
No,
my
DG types of procurement.
The type of procurement methods. See the type of procurement methods.
Yes.
That's what is it, yeah.
You said the types of procurement. You didn't say method. You said types of procurement. Types of procurement are there. Types of procurement methods are there.
Now, let's start with the types of procurement, and then we move to the types or methods of procurement. Please proceed. You can first start with the types of procurement, and then it is for you now to go ahead and tell us the methods of procurement.
Yes. Basically, there are two types of procurement.
Two?
Yes, basically. In a broader perspective, that's the public procurement and the private procurement.
Please proceed.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what is public procurement and private?
Council, can you reconcile the evidence? Because the Director General made mention of 3 types.
Yes.
So can you refer the question back to the witness?
Yes.
To restate so that we can have a coherent,
Thank you.
yes, evidence.
Thank you very much. So please explain to us what you mean by public and private procurement, and we'll want also the Director General as well to explain to us what he meant by direct, indirect, and service procurements. So we can just continue with you with respect to these 2 types of procurements, and we can have clarification with regards to your Director General in relation to the 3 types of procurement he had mentioned.
Okay, basically the public procurement is that procurement where the acquisition of goods, works, and services are by the use of public funds with prescribed procedures regulated by rules and standards.
Very well. Please
That's
proceed.
public procurement. On the other hand, the private procurement is that strand of procurement outside the use of public funds. Outside the use of public funds, where private practitioners, private individual, private firms use their private monies to acquire goods, works, and services.
Can you give an example of a public procurement and one example of a private procurement?
Local government authorities or any public institution
Yes.
that intends to procure goods, works, and services. Let's say the Gambia Public Procurement Authority is a public institution. In its bids to procure a vehicle, that would be a good example of public procurement.
Very well.
Let's say the Association of Contractors, those are private entities. Any individual may intend to buy anything, a mobile. That money will come from his personal earned money to procure such an item. He may not necessarily follow laid down rules and principles. That's private procurement.
Is private procurement being also regulated by your office, by your institution as well?
No, the authority only regulates public procurement. Though
Very well.
private practitioners also are participants in public procurement.
Now, the Honorable Director General, can you further explain to us, when you mentioned direct, indirect, and service procurement, what you meant by these 3?
Direct procurement is the process of purchasing, obtaining raw materials, resources, goods, and services that are utilized in the core operations of a business. So it's direct purchasing, that's direct procurement.
Please proceed.
There's also indirect procurement.
Yes, can you explain that?
Which is simply the opposite of direct purchasing, perhaps single source.
What is indirect procurement?
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to reconcile. That's what I was trying to reconcile.
Yes, so let me help you. It is for you guys to tell us and the public regarding the role of your institution, that is the Gambia Public Procurement Authority. So you have to see us as lay people, see everyone that is listening as lay people, and so you educate the people regarding what your office does before we go into the compliance reports that you have outlined. we need to understand some of these basic principles. What you have explained, Mrs. Tambura, is that there are two types of procurements, and that one is public and one is private. But prior to that, your director said that there are three types, which is the direct, indirect, and service. Now, you may be speaking on the same line, or there may be a difference somewhere. Can you explain to us these three type of procurements, if you call it types, or if it has any terminology as to what it means when you talk about direct procurement? You've already read that. If you talk about indirect procurement, what does it mean? And then we'll go to service. Mr. Jaite.
I'm consulting with my director, so let's confine it to methods. We do not want to be here to be contradicting ourselves. That's not the purpose of being here. So we will confine it to the types he has just given you, which are the two types, public and private.
Yes, Mr. Jaite, just to assist, I believe that all of you are technicians, so sometimes the use of terminologies, you could be meaning the same thing, but in a general sense, just like Tamura has said, he is categorizing in a simpler form, two basic types, that is the public and the private. And we are interested in the public, and that is why I believe he zeroed in to, you are going more technical, and that is why the council is asking you to simplify it, so that when we come to the issues, and you are aware, of what has transpired in the councils in terms of their procurement and their terms of compliance. That is why the public needs to understand why you are set up as an authority, what is your role and responsibility. And when we start asking questions, we will see where the deficiencies are. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're absolutely right. I understand the line of questioning is what we are here for also is public and private procurement. So I agree with you. So we'll go along the lines of the director's definition of the two types of procurement.
Yes, you can always come back another day and give us some of these clarifications. Now, let's leave that issue for now, and can you tell us the methods of procurement? What are the methods of procurement as per the Act and Regulation?
There are lots of methods of procurement, but the main ones are perhaps competitive bidding, restricted tender. That's open tender.
Can we take it one step at a time?
Open tender.
Open tender.
Restricted tender.
Restrictive tender.
Single sourcing.
Single source.
And there are many more. The director will elaborate.
Okay, thank you. I think he has mentioned three. That's the open tender, the restricted tender, single source. We have request for quotations.
Request for quotation.
Request for proposals.
Yes.
Framework agreements.
Framework agreements. Please proceed. Yes. You may proceed. Is that all?
Yes.
Good. So these are the ones that are.
Yes, these are the
these are the ones that are being recognized by our relevant laws and regulations.
As per the 2018 Public Procurement Act.
Very well. Now, when we say open tender, what do we mean? When a procurement method is said to be an open tender?
Open tender is a procurement method that is preferred compared to any other method as laid down in the public procurement law. It is a method that invites all potential suppliers of goods, works, and services by publication, so that every potential economic operator, every potential bidder has the equal opportunity to participate in a public tender.
Okay.
That method is called open tender. So we all have what we call open tender international. We also have what we call open tender national. In other jurisdiction, instead of the two, they will tell you international competitive bidding and national competitive bidding. But open tender categorizes or envelopes the two. Open tender international, open tender national. So the open tender international, in most of the time, you are expected to publish it in international media, journal, newspapers, etc. And the open tender national, the expectation is you publicize it in national media or newspapers.
Now,
Sorry, intervene here. In the event that the open tender local, an international bidder decides to bid, what is your responsibility in that?
Yes, once it is open tender, even the international bidders have the right to bid. Most international bidders, in fact, they have their own representative locally. So the law does not debar anybody from bidding, even if you are international.
That is the clarification I wanted, so that it will be clear that even though it is open tender local, people outside of the jurisdiction can tender for goods, works, and services. You understand, even though it is not specified to be international. Thank you.
exactly. Yes. So now, then following up on that that questioning, then what would you say is the difference between an open tender local and an open tender international?
I think I made reference to it, but the fundamental difference here, because all the two, whether local or international, the critical or the fundamental principle is there must be publication. Must be publication. But the international, the publication should be in an international media, whether electronic or print. But for the local, the publication should be in a local media. That's one fundamental. Secondly, which is very crucial, though it's a thin line of distinction, but it's very crucial. If publications are done locally and the open tender is national, the expectation is payment has to be in local currency. That's the expectation. Payment has to be in local currency. If it is open tender international, every bidder has the right to bid in foreign currency. These are the fundamental differences.
Very well. Now, how about the restricted tendering method?
The restricted tender is also another acceptable procurement method. As the name implies, it is restricted in nature, but that doesn't mean there is no competition. Here it is restricted to five potential bidders. In that tender process, you have the right, as provided for in the law, to invite 5 potential bidders, either by direct invitation or by pre-qualification. 5 potential bidders to bid. For example, the reason for the restricted tender is the number of suppliers or economic operators most of the time are limited in nature and they are known to you. For example, if you want to buy vehicles, we all know, even the ordinary man in the street knows that there are restricted vehicle dealers in the country, limited in number. Why should you waste public resources by publicizing it, advertising it? You can invite them directly to come and participate. That's just an example. It is a procurement law method recognized by law for reasons that those bidders are limited in number, they are known to you. That's one of the reasons. The condition, I'm going for that. It was not part of your question, but I can explain the condition for the use of procurement for the restricted tender.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, the other condition is specialized equipments or materials. There are certain materials, equipment, they are specialized in nature.
Yes.
Because they are specialized in nature, the possibility of having a large number of bidders is very minimal. In that case, you target those specialists who are specialized in the production or in the supply of those specialized materials. In that case, it means you should limit yourself to that number of bidders. The other reason is because of urgency. These provisions are as per the law because of urgency. Sometimes if you are caught by situation of urgency and the consideration for open tender may be disproportionate to the value in question, you have the right to go in for restricted tender. Basically, these are some of the conditions for the use of restricted tender.
Thank you. And then I would also ask for how about request
Sorry,
for...
before you go to the next
Please,
one.
yes.
Who determines the selection of the restricted participants in this method of procurement?
The determination of the procurement method to use solely and squarely lies in the hands of the contracts committee. The contracts committee is one of the institutional structures at institutional level that oversees all procurement.
Thank you.
Yes, you have explained open tender method, restricted tender method, and now can you explain what is meant by request for quotation?
Request for quotation is also, to some extent, a kind of restrictive method. However, the threshold involved in request for quotation, the threshold involved is 1 million and below. There are two categories of request for quotations. Request for quotation with prior approval, request for quotation without prior approval. The request for quotation without prior approval, the ceiling is 500,000. From 500,000 to 20,000, institutions have the right to go in for request for quotation without obtaining approval from the authority. From 20,000 to 500,000 for goods and services,
yes,
or 50,000 to 500,000 for works. That's request for quotation without approval. From 500,000 to a million, that's request for quotation with approval. Here it means, despite the fact that you have the right to go in for request for quotation, but you need the prior approval of the authority at every stage of the procurement process. So some of the conditions for the use of request for quotation, one is, of course, the threshold. Once the amount involved is within the threshold I have just mentioned, the law permits you to go in for request for quotations. Small works, routine services, you can also go in for request for quotation. Readily available goods, materials that can be sourced locally at competitive prices. If you are faced with that situation, the law also allows you to go in for request for quotation. In other words, off-the-shelf goods or materials. The law also allows you to go in for request for quotation.
So basically, herein you have the price being a key determinant factor in relation to whether a certain method, which is request for quotation, should be employed or not.
Yes, the price is one of the conditions for the use of request for quotation.
Yes.
All the procurement methods, they have their conditions.
Yes.
So price, that's what we call the threshold. Once you satisfy the price, the threshold, you have the right to go in for that method. But sometimes you may not satisfy the price aspect, the threshold aspect, but you may satisfy other conditions. That can also necessitate for the use of the method.
So for any procurement that is between, you said, $250,000 to $500,000, you can go ahead with it without prior approval. 20,000. Yes. Can you please repeat again what you said?
Sorry. The threshold, the minimum threshold.
Yes.
For request for quotations.
Right.
Goods and services is 20,000. That's the minimum threshold. Goods and services 20,000. If it is works, it's 50,000. Then the upper threshold is 500,000, whether goods or works or services.
Yes.
It means you can go in for request for quotation without recourse to come into GPPA for prior approval.
Now, two things we have to understand here. When you say prior approval, without prior approval, when it falls within these thresholds, 20,000 to 500,000, what does it mean when you say you can go ahead without having prior approval?
Okay, like if you go back to the act, you realize that the contracts committee, which is one of the most important institutional structures at procurement organization level, they also have a kind of a mandate. So the law provides that in that event or in this circumstance, they can conduct the procurement from start by following the whole procurement from start to finish, from the requisition to delivery, without coming to GPPA. The law allows them to do that. They'll do their requisition, define their requirements, evaluate, award the contract, manage the contract, do everything without coming to GPPA. That is their threshold at institutional level. So it means they don't need to get any approval from us. That's prior approval. That is, they don't need any approval before they are able to move to any step.
Now, now, do they need approval at any given time?
As per the law,
Yes.
approvals are needed at every stage of the procurement process if the amount involved is 1 million and above.
Yes. Now, we will get there. When you use the word prior approval, it probably suggests to someone, in someone's mind that you may not need an initial approval, but then the law allows you to go ahead with the procurement. Once you have completed, you can still go ahead and get approval. That's just me thinking. What does it mean? Do you still have to? Do they still have to come back to your office and get any approval of any sort, or kind of file some sort of a report or whatsoever? They don't.
Okay, I think here, Chair, allow me to expand a little bit for ease of understanding. Procurement generally, as per our country system, we have two strands, two phases: the prior approvals and the post reviews. In other words,
prior approval and first review.
Yes. Others will call it the prior approval, the ex ante. The post is called ex post. Here, so that we understand better.
Yes.
So, amounts up to 500,000, falls within the post threshold. Institutions, local government authorities can conduct everything at institutional level, at their level, without the need for approval, without the need for coming to GPPA.
Yes.
Until they are completely done.
Yes.
So during this period, after the whole exercise, at the end of the year, that's the time we go to the field, GPPA, we go to the field to review their procurement transactions. And after the review, reports are generated. Those ones are called the compliance review reports. That is why the compliance review reports that I have here, most of them are centered on procurement whose value is 500,000 and below. The compliance review reports are centered on procurement whose values are 500,000 and below, most of the time. So the other, So the other aspect is the prior review. Under normal circumstance, the prior review are procurement whose value is 1 million and above. 1 million and above. In such situations, institutions are expected to submit all the activities at every stage of the procurement process to GPPA. First, you have to submit to GPPA for us to approve the procurement method, for us to approve the bidding documents or solicitation documents. After approval, it is sent back to you as an institution. Then you float the tenders, invite potential, depending on the procurement method you are using. Thereafter, the evaluation report is sent back to GPPA. So at every stage, it's sent back to GPPA for us to review the evaluation report and approve or otherwise. So that's the prior review. Submissions are made at every stage of the procurement process. Sometimes there are certain amount involved, certain threshold amount involved. It may be less than $1 million, but still you need to come to GPPA because the procurement method you intend to use, the amount involved is above the threshold. Let's say if you want to single source, the threshold for single source is 20,000 and below. but you want to spend 50,000 on single source. Maybe you are going to apply other conditions for the use of single source different from the threshold. In that case, you need to come to GPPA regardless of the amount involved for prior approval.
Yes, there's a question from one of the commissioners. You may want to take that question first before you proceed with your answers.
Thank you, Director. So it means that no contracts committee of any institution has the mandate to request for quotation when it is $1 million or 10 million, for example. No contracts committee have that right. It must have to go through GPPA process.
Contracts committees have the right to use a request for quotation, but it is mandatory. If it is above $1 million, every stage of the process must be submitted to GPPA for our review and approval.
Now, we are still on the process of understanding the various methods of procurement and where they are applicable and what role you play in relation to whether approvals, receiving requests, and so on and so forth, and the compliance. We'll get to all of those. You were explaining that 20,000 to 500,000. You can choose to do request for quotation. How about an amount more than $500,000?
Once it is more than 500,000, it can still be within the threshold for request for quotation. That's why I said the request for quotation has two ends, 500,000 and below, but also from 500,000 to 1 million is still request for quotation. But that request for quotation, you need approval of the authority at every stage of the process.
Yes.
But sometimes you can also, let's say, above $1 million now, you want to go in for request for quotation. In that instance, you have to clarify with the law. You know, there are other conditions for the use of request for quotations. But fundamentally, which is very important, for the request for quotation, the threshold is very fundamental. The threshold is very fundamental. Yes. However, if you feel you did not satisfy the threshold, but you have satisfied all the conditions for the use of request for quotation, if you feel you have satisfied them, the law allows you to use it. However, you need the approval of the authority at every stage of the procurement process. Because sometimes, let's say there could be emergency and you cannot go into other methods, for example.
Okay, Mr. Tambura, you have said that, just to repeat it, to get it very clear, that if it is above the threshold, then you will need approval from the authority. So, in the Act, is it mandatory or is it discretionary?
If I get you right, I think whether it is mandatory to get approval from the authority.
Yes. No, after the threshold. Now, would it be, is it now mandatory or, sorry. What I mean is that, you know, the procurement method will be determined by the threshold. In this instant, we are talking about request for quotation. But if it is, for example, more than 500,000, what I'm saying is that would it now be mandatory for you to seek the approval for the further steps that you need to do the procurement? Or is it discretional? You may go to the authority, you may not go to the authority. That is what I want you to clarify, so that it will be very clear that after the threshold of 500,000, it is either mandatory or discretional.
Thank you, Chair. It is, as per the laws, it is mandatory.
Thank you.
Yes, it is mandatory.
So okay. Council, you can proceed.
Now, still on the request for quotation. Now, what is the process involved in when the contracts committee or a particular institution wants to go by this method, request for quotation?
Okay, as I said earlier, the request for quotation is an acceptable method. Now, depending on the amount involved, depending on the amount involved, whether it's the request for quotation with approval, whether it's the request for quotation without approval. However, once the requisitions are carried out, the contracts committee is a very fundamental structure in an institution. They determine the use of a particular procurement method. It means that method itself has to be approved by the contracts committee vis-a-vis the accounting officer, that's the head of the institution, has to approve the use of that particular method. The approval must be necessitated by a meeting of the contracts committee. They have to sit, discuss, agree on the course of action to be taken. Once it is agreed, they can use the request for quotation, and the request for quotation has a package.
Yes.
So that package has to be complete. Let's say, for example, 1, the amount involved has to be within the threshold for the request for quotation. 2, we have what we call reporting forms.
Yes.
GP, we have our reporting forms. All the reporting forms, they are very significant, very important. It tells a lot. Maybe we'll come to that later. You have to administer our reporting forms. You have to ensure that the one you are, those that you have pre-qualified, because the laws requires at least 3 if you are going in for request for quotation, at least 3 independent potential economic operator. At least 3 independent potential economic operator. You have to ensure all these things, they have the wherewithal, the strength, whatever, to satisfy your requirements. Once you are able to satisfy this thing, you have the right to go in for request for quotation. If it is 500,000 and below, you don't need to submit it to us. If it is above 500,000, you need to submit it to us before the award recommendation. Because all you can do at that level, if you need a prior approval, all you can do at your level is to recommend for award. Is to recommend for award. When it comes to us, after review, if you are satisfied that you have played the games by the rules, then we can endorse your recommendation.
Good. How about single sourcing?
Single sourcing is another acceptable procurement method, but the least desired procurement method because it is non-competitive in nature. It is really non-competitive in nature. However, the fact that the law has made provision for the use or for the adoption of single source, it is still within our country system. There are conditions that are attached if you want to use single source.
And what are they?
Yes, one fundamental is the threshold. The threshold for single source for goods and services is 20,000 and below. For works, 50,000 and below. That's one of the conditions. The other condition for the use of single source is emergency situations. If there is an emergency situation and you think lives are at risk, public safety is at risk, etc., the law also allows you to use single source. If there is an also urgent need of the procurement in question, the law allows you to use single source. But however, sometimes it's very difficult to determine what is urgent, what is not urgent. So that's why most of the case you submit these things to GP for prior approval, so that we help in determining, because as per the law, the urgency must have been necessitated by circumstances beyond your control. You cannot foresee what is about to happen. There is an epidemic, etc., that you have no control of, let's say force measures, etc. With those circumstances, the law allows you to use single source. It also allows you to use single source for what we call standardization or compatibility. You have some materials, infrastructure, but you want to increase the number, you want to buy additional materials. For reason of standardization or compatibility, the law allows you to go in for single source. The law also allows you to go in for single source if it is additional works. You have already conducted an initial procurement through a competitive method. A has won. During the implementation, you saw the need for additional work. The law allows you to give that additional work to the same contractor because initially he won the contract based on competition. And finally, traceable commodities. the law allows you to go in for single source. These are some of the conditions for the use.
I believe you have discussed the probably 4 main types of or methods of procurement. That is the restricted one, request for quotation, single sourcing, and open tender. Is there any that is outstanding?
These are the most commonly used in the country. We also have what we call the request for proposals. Normally, that is the procurement method specifically meant for consultancy assignments.
Request for proposals?
Proposal, yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, basically, the explanation is very precise. Any consultancy assignment, engagement, where intellectual expertise is needed, expert advice is needed, for the fulfillment of a particular assignment, the procurement method used would be request for quotation, because it's going to take the consultancy dimension.
And what are the requirements in relation to that?
Sorry?
Are there any requirements?
No, the drawing line here is consultancy. Once it is consultancy, now regardless of the amount involved, it's request for proposal, regardless of the amount involved.
Now, yes.
Under this request for proposal, do you mean request for proposal both technical and financial when it comes to the consultancy activity?
Okay, let me clarify here, because request for proposal, as per our country system, is both a method and a process. Yeah, it's both a method, just like the procurement method I have just mentioned, is also part of the procurement methods. But however, in the process of acquiring the services of a consultant, the process is also a request for proposal. In this case, you have to define your requirements, your TOR, ask them to submit in their technical proposal and financial proposals.
The reason why I wanted for you to clarify, it's for him to understand, because when it comes to consultancy, when you are to make a proposal, you accompany the proposal, you do a technical and a financial proposal, which gives you a holistic look at the proposal that you are submitting. And if I can get you right, you said that is regardless of the amount. There is nothing like threshold.
Once it is consultancy, the amount involved is no more significant.
Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Commissioner.
Very much, Madam Chair and Council. I just wanted some clarification on request for quotation. You said it's a process, and for every step, you have to give an approval of the process. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Has there been any case where you can, let's say it's a 5-step process, and you've gone up to step 3 and you disagree? What would happen? If the process is a 5-step process, we all agree it's a 5-step process, and we've gone up to step 3, and GPPA disagree, because you say for every step you have to give an approval. Now, if you disagree with step 3, what would happen?
Then we'll write back, excuse me, we'll write back to the institution to highlight the step that is missed and request that it is followed.
And if it is not to your satisfaction, the process will not continue.
Now, as per the law, it cannot continue.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, is there any question? So, I believe just to aid you on that, the requirement probably you said here is it depends entirely on with respect to the type of request for quotation, whether the threshold is 20,000 to 500. Mr. Jaite, your director explained these two differences.
Come again, please.
Your director of compliance explained that in making sure that you send every application to your office for every step, yes, just as the Honorable Commissioner Joyner outlined. Your director of compliance outlined that it depends on the threshold of the amount involved. I don't know whether you were following that. If it is 20,000 to 500,000, then you don't need prior approval, which means you don't need to follow all those strict rules. Just correct me if I'm wrong.
It's correct.
Yes. So, but what the commissioner was asking, probably you failed to make that distinction.
Can I clarify that to the commissioner, maybe?
Yes.
You're right. From 20,000 to 500,000, if a step in procurement is missed, we call this procurement procedure, then we would not know because it's at the level of the institution. But these are the type of procurement that we come back to audit. We call them compliance review, but in other words, it's a procurement audit at the end of the year. Then we will pick it up, and then it will be in our report.
So in effect, it's after the fact.
Yes, it's after the fact.
So as somebody would say, you are giving a prescription to a dead man.
Okay,
so let me clarify it here. You know, that's why at the beginning I said the request for quotation, there are two ends. I said that clearly. So it means the first end, the 500,000 and below, that is only discovered by the authority when we go in for our compliance review at the end of the year. But still now, within request for quotation from 500,000 to $1 million, it's still request for quotation, but it comes to us at every stage. So it means if there are anomalies, we can easily discover it real time. Thank you.
Yes. So these four are the main types of procurement in public office. Is that correct? Now, what is the structure?
He listed another one, which is the framework agreement. Can he just highlight that?
The
framework agreement.
Yes. Can you discuss the framework agreement?
Yes, as per our laws, it's also a procurement method. Normally, we have two types of framework agreements: the multiple framework agreements and the single framework agreements. Normally, it is that's the method which is normally used when you are dealing or you want to acquire routine services, things that you will be needing regularly. So you are always advised to use this framework agreement. Let's say the procurement of fuel by institution. This you need this routinely, etc. However, it goes this way. Initially, you have to invite all potential economic operators, bidders, let's say fuel in this case, all the fuel dealers in the country, subject the whole process to competition. But during the process, they have to understand, all the economic operators must understand that whoever wins this process, whoever wins this tender, you are going to sign a contract with the procuring organization for a period not exceeding 2 years. For a period not exceeding 2 years. So that after the competition, maybe you have invited 5, 6, or 10, they compete. If it is multiple framework agreements, you sign contract with at least 2 or above. If it is single, you sign contract with only 1. But it means at the beginning, they all understand they are going in for competition, and whoever wins will have a contract. The contract will last for a minimum period of 2 years, subject to renewal upon satisfactory performance. So such arrangements are called framework agreements. So these are just new innovations in the public procurement domain, just to ensure, to avoid repeated requests, etc., etc.
If I may come in at that point. Yes, Mr. Tambura. Under the framework agreement, under the multiple agreement framework, do you select within the group, because you've given an example of the fuel issue, do you select within the group 2 or 3 potential economic operators to sign on the agreement, or you sign on only one and give the person a 2-year contract?
For the multiple framework agreement, you sign with at least 2. That's why it's called multiple.
Okay.
At least 2. You can sign with 3, 4, depending on your need. In this case, after signing with 2, for example, now as an institution, you have 2 options. In the case you need a particular procurement request within that framework agreement, those 2 that you have signed contract with, you have the right to invite one. But remember, the due process has already taken place. You have right to invite one and for him to deliver whatever you want. You also have the right to allow the two to compete again for that particular request.
Now, that sort of framework, would it not encourage corruption? Because, for example, let us take an example of the provision of fuel. If you sign with company A and company B and company C, and company A delivers the fuel on a satisfactorily performs under the agreement, and lease out company B and C, is it not a possibility of encouraging corruption? Subtle corruption, I mean.
If the principle of framework agreement are followed to the latter, most of the time it has come to, in fact, fight corruption. Yeah, because that's why I said initially it was a very transparent process, and everybody understands that I am competing, and once I win, I have the chance to sign a contract. 1 year contract should not go beyond 2 years. But however, in your requirements, most of the time in framework agreements, the requirements, most of the time, best practice indicates that the prices are fixed. We know over time, 1 year, 2 year, almost every item, there is a potential increase in price. But the fact that it's a framework agreement and the requirement was the prices are fixed, you have tied the economic operator to maintain his prices throughout the contract duration. That has a huge opportunity savings.
But how would that contrast with the issue of inflation? Because just like you said, if you are able to peg the economic operator, you understand, within a framework of a price context, price index, what would happen to the changes in variation of inflation, etc.? Yeah.
This I know is a concern expressed by most of the suppliers. We are fully aware. Yes. But let's say as a regulator, we are also very concerned in opportunity savings. How do you save money? That's why at the beginning you made it very clear. You never impose it on them. This is my requirement. Those who are ready to accept the requirement, they are free. But however, if you think this may have a damning impact on the performance of the economic operator, you can also make it flexible by price adjustment. That during the contract period, prices are subjected to adjustment of a particular percentage. That's also acceptable. So we have two extreme situations, either fixed or price adjustment. So you think what plays better for you?
We will get back to that. Yes, Mr. Jete, you want to say? Okay.
He has answered the question.
All right. Ms. Council, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Now we discuss the institutional framework in relation to how procurement is being done at the institutional level. Now, can you tell us what structures are usually in place, either as mandated by the Act or the regulation, in relation to public institutions in furtherance of procurement activities? Do you understand my question?
Yes. We have what we call the procurement implementation structures.
Yes.
Others will call them institutional structures.
Right.
And as per our country system, the main ones are 4. 1, we have the contracts committee.
Yes.
2, the specialized procurement unit. 3, the evaluation committee. 4, the receipt and examination committee. And the last one.
Can you take it one step at a time? Contracts committee, SPU, specialized procurement unit.
Unit, yes.
And 3?
Specialized procurement unit, evaluation committee.
Evaluation committee.
The receipt and examination committee.
Elicit.
Receipt.
Receipt.
Yes, receipt and examination committee.
And what?
Examination committee.
Examination committee.
It's one committee, receipt and examination committee.
So these are 4 committees.
Yes, and the 5th is the disposal committee.
Disposal committee.
Yeah.
So this is a structure that should be in place.
Yes, let me clarify. So the first 2,
yes,
the contracts committee and the specialized procurement unit, these are mandatory structures.
Yes.
They are mandatory structures. The evaluation committee is a recommended and a best practice. The disposal committee is when the need arises, because there may be no need for a disposal committee because you don't conduct anything.
Because what?
I mean, the disposal committee.
Yes.
If there is no need for disposal,
yes,
you may not be mandated,
yes,
to institute or and the like. So that's
right.
why I said some of the committees are mandatory.
So we will come to that.
Others are discretionary. Yeah.
Yes. So let's discuss these committees one by one.
Okay.
So that we understand them better.
Okay.
Let's start with the contracts committee. What is the role of the contracts committee in procurement?
Let me start. Can I start with the structure of the contracts committee so that you understand it?
Absolutely.
Because the law make reference to who should be the contracts committee.
Yes.
Minimum 3.
Yes.
That's the head of the administrative head of the institution, also called the accounting officer. In the case of area councils, the CEOs.
Yes.
1, a member of the contracts committee. 2, the officer in charge of finance should be a member of the contracts committee, and the head of the specialized procurement unit. The head of the procurement unit should also be a member of the contracts committee. These are 3 mandatory members, and normally they have an ad hoc member who has a mastery and understanding of the subject matter. You always invite such a person as an ad hoc member. Yes. That's the contracts committee. So they are fundamental.
Before you proceed, the subject matter specialist, which is supposed to be a member of the contracts committee in the specific institution, in the particular institution, does that subject matter expert, does he necessarily need to come from the institution, or do they need to co-opt him from outside of the institution?
Yes, as per the law, both ways acceptable, can be from within or from without. Okay, that's, so I have just explained the composition of the contracts committee.
Yes.
So the fundamental mandate, role of the contracts committee is to oversee the conduct of procurement at institutional level. In other words, the contracts committee approves all procurements at the stage, at every stage.
Yes.
At institutional level, the contracts committee is a kind of GPPA at institutional level.
Yes.
They do everything. They approve the use of single source. They approve the procurement plans, do evaluation, make recommendation for award, etc. Yes. They oversee the conduct of procurement throughout the process, basically.
So now, you have made a very important point with respect to the fact that they perform the role of GPPA at the level of the institutions. For example, if the threshold is below or within the amount that does not require prior approval, they can just follow the requirements and then they approve. Is that correct? And so where there is prior approval required, then they have to forward it to your office.
Perfect.
So now, maybe instead of starting from the top, we start from the bottom to better understand the structure at the institutional level. How does it start at the level of procurement? How does it start? Who decides what we want in this institution, and where do you forward it to next? What do you have to give to that authority until it reaches the contracts committee? Can you run us up the ladder?
Okay, I think that's important. At institutional level, there is a process that must be followed. And if you look at the procurement cycle, you come to realize that there is what we call procurement planning.
Yes.
But before planning, in fact, there is what we call needs identification, procurement planning. So it means at institutional level, as an institution, for your operation, you need to plan yourself in terms of your procurement. What do we intend to buy for a particular year? So during implementation, if there is a need now to procure something very specific, the law requires that you try to ensure that this particular procurement was planned for. It means it must have been in the procurement plan. And all procurement plans should be submitted to GPPA for our review. But at institutional level, the contracts committee has to approve it, or the accounting officer. In fact, he's the head of the contracts committee. Once you identify that particular procurement, then you raise a requisition. We have a national requisition that's called Form 100. That's requisition. It's part of our forms. That form, if you checked it, it encompasses almost all the objectives of the Act, all the fundamental principles of procurement. That's the way it is designed, so that you cannot personalize, you cannot individualize, etc. procurement. Once you raise the requisition, that requisition must be approved by the accounting officer.
I will have to ask you this. I know it is going to be a bit, I don't know, boring on your part, but again, we're doing this job for the public. You're using the word requisition. Please explain what it means, and then you proceed with that.
Okay, requisition, I think, as the name implies, once you have the intention to buy, there is a particular form.
Yes.
That form is part of our forms.
Yes.
So it is a requisition because it is the form you use to make a request to initiate procurement. The request that is made, it is embedded in a particular form. That form is called a requisition, or as we call it, Form 100. So that form is called the requisition.
So in short, or in summary, the requisition form is the process of which you fill a form to request for a particular procurement.
Yeah, for the commencement of
procurement.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Please proceed.
Yes, once that is done and the accounting officer or the contracts company approve that requisition, normally the order structure within the institution is called a specialized procurement unit.
So who does that? Is it the specialized procurement unit or
the requisition?
Yes.
Most of the best practice dictates that the requisition comes from the user department. But I have a caveat. Most institutions have what we call institutional requisition. The form I'm referring to, this one is a national requisition. Depending on the institutional arrangements, some institutions, their admin department does all requisition. Some institutions, the user department does the requisition, because sometimes the requisition should be accompanied by the requirements.
By a user department, you mean the department that needs the particular...
Yes, for which that procurement is being conducted.
Is meant for.
Yes.
Yes. So
because we expect that the user department will know what they need better. So
yes.
That's why the requisition, most of the time, it comes with the requirements, specification, etc.
So what you are saying, you have two types of filling out the requisition form. In some instances, it's being done by the administrative authority, and in some, it's being done by the user department. That is the department that needs the particular request.
Yes, well, that is an institutional arrangement.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
So please proceed.
Now, let me ask from Mr. Tambura. I think if we take guide from the regulations under section 74, sub 1, going down. But before I ask the question on that, then you are saying that there are two types, going to the department that needs to make the request because of the particular nature of what they want to request. My question here is, what would be the use of the contracts committee that oversees the transactions of requesting for works, goods, and services?
Yes, because that's why I said it is an institutional arrangement, and we have what we call internal requisition, different from the national requisition. That requisition is directed to the contracts committee, especially the accounting officer, the head of the contracts committee, who should approve the requisition. So it means once the request is, it's just a matter of making a request. So the request is addressed to the contracts committee, the chairman of the contracts committee, who by default is the head of the institution. He approved the requisition and then redirect the requisition to the appropriate unit. Most of the time, the procurement unit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, you are explaining at the level as to at the institutional level, before procurement request will reach the contracts committee, what the stages are. So now, after you have, let's say, the requisition form has been filled by the relevant department or authority, what is next?
Once the form is filled, it is addressed to the chairman of the contracts committee, or by extension to the contracts committee for their approval.
Yes.
Once it is approved, it is redirected or minuted, in most cases, to the unit that is charged with the conduct of procurement.
Yes.
That is the specialized procurement unit, to actually initiate the procurement process now.
But how about the evaluation committee? What is their role?
No, they are coming at a later stage, not yet.
Okay.
They are coming at a later.
Yes,
after the conduct of the. Okay, once it is minuted, let's say, to this procurement unit, they will initiate the procurement, depending on the procurement method they have decided to adopt. They'll go and source the market, get the required quotations, come and do their preliminary evaluation. The specialized procurement unit can do their preliminary evaluation. That's just make some analysis of what they have collected. If an evaluation committee exists within the institution, so the whole package now is submitted to the evaluation committee to do the proper evaluation of the quotation received, make recommendation, and submit the recommendation to the contracts committee for consideration.
Is it a requirement, the evaluation committee, or it is just optional?
The evaluation committee is optional, but a good practice.
So it is not provided for by the act or the regulation?
The regulation make reference to evaluation committee, but it said institution may institute evaluation committee. The mandatory units are the contracts committee and the specialized procurement units.
All right. So we will come back to.
Sorry, let me just assist. That is found under section 74 of the regulation, right?
Yes.
Sub 1 says a contracts committee may establish an evaluation committee for the purpose of carrying out the technical and financial evaluation of the bids or proposals. But it further went on in subsection 2 to say that an evaluation committee established may comprise a separate technical evaluation committee and a separate financial committee, or a combined, that is B, a combined technical and financial evaluation committee. And subsection 3 says an evaluation committee shall consist of a chairperson and a minimum of 2 or a maximum of 6, and it goes on. So my question is, aside from the contracts committee and the technical committee, this one is optional, right?
The evaluation committee is optional, but it's a good practice. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Now we move to the other committee, which is the exams committee. Examination committee?
Yeah, receipt and examination committee.
Is that also mandatory, or is it optional?
Yes, it's optional.
Okay.
But it's a very good practice. Normally, if procurements are done, we expect, especially with goods procurement, we expect deliveries to be made. So normally, if deliveries are made, it is always made before this committee to receive the goods, confirm that there is no mismatch between requirements and actual delivery, satisfy the goods, then hand it over to the stores finally. So fundamentally, that's the purpose, just for quality assurance purposes.
Very well. Now, once all these steps are being met, so then you have the contracts committee faced with the task of approving or disapproving?
Yes, the contracts committee, as I said, is the GPPA at institutional level. Regardless of the numerous institution structures, all these structures are answerable to the contracts committee. They are all answerable to the contracts committee. All their activities must be subjected to the approval of the contracts committee at every stage. including awards decisions.
So the SPU, the Special Procurement Unit, do you have anything like a procurement unit and then a special procurement unit? Is there any difference between these two?
There is no difference except the name. There is no difference. If you look at the sometimes it says specialized procurement unit, sometimes it says procurement unit. It's talking of the same thing. Yeah, but it is the unit that works under the supervision of the contracts committee. It is the unit that is taxed, that is charged with the responsibility to conduct procurement, to conduct the actual procurement. It is the unit that is charged with that on behalf of the institution, under the supervision and direction of the contracts committee.
Very well. Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Council. I just wanted to know, is it, I've been hearing this, I just wanted some confirmation that institutions must, I'm using the word must, have a procurement unit. Is that true or false? Because, sorry?
That's true.
That's true. And is it also true that this procurement committee must be staffed with a person that has gone through your procurement school or whatever to be, call it a procurement specialist?
That is the objective, but that is not what obtains in all the institutions. But that is the objective, that it should be headed by someone who is knowledgeable in procurement.
And if one fails to provide a procurement specialist within the institution, how would you rate that institution? Would their processes be delayed or may not be seen in a good light as to what they want to procure and all whatnot?
And that's why we have the career development and training department at our level, at the level of the authority. So we provide training to the procuring organizations, the contracts committee and the SPUs to augment their capacities in terms of procurement activities, to conduct their procurement.
Yes, but that's half of my question answered. The other half is, does that person, the absence of that person within the organization, delay or somewhat avert the procurement process?
No, if the procurement process is done correctly, then it would not avert it. But if the person is not competent, yes, then it can delay the procurement process. But certainly it is taken into consideration in the rating. For instance, now we are authorizing institutions to conduct their procurement. And one of the criteria is we rate the institution's capability to conduct its own procurement is the rating of the SPU. If a qualified person is heading the SPU and the members of the SPU are qualified, then they get a higher rating. Otherwise, they can get a poor rating.
As a follow-up,
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, as a follow-up, the procurement specialist that is within the institution, if he or she is not, you made mention, if it is not that qualified, it will delay the process. But don't you think that also hampers the delivery of the institution in certain instances?
Absolutely, it will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in the event that there is a petition on the process and there is no procurement unit in the particular institution, how do you deal with the issues?
Okay, thank you. It would be a very interesting scenario that if there is no procurement unit in any particular institution, it begs the question then who conducts the procurement? Because as per the laws, it is only the unit who should conduct the procurement. Notwithstanding, once there is a petition, there is a particular body responsible for receiving, handling, and managing complaints. That's the Independent Complaints Review Board. Once there is a complaint, the expectation is that complaint should be addressed to the Complaints Review Board. But of course, there are processes, first to the institution, of course, and they are expected to respond within a reasonable period, then to the Complaints Review Board, and all these correspondences, GPPA is copied. But with or without a procurement unit, complaints must be handled because there is a body established for the purpose of handling complaints.
So the authority doesn't have a representation at the board?
No, there is no representation. Initially, the first complaint review board, as per the 2014 Act and 2001 Act, we used to have representation. But because of that potential conflict of interest, it was advisable that we are not represented. So as we speak in practice, we are not represented at the complaint review board, but all their deliberations, etc., we are copied.
Thank you. Council, you can proceed.
Yes, Madam Chair and the Commissioners, I realize that it's just we 4:30. May I be guided whether we need to stop here till tomorrow or not?
Yes, I believe that they have review reports. Can we admit the reports?
Yes, I mean, the reports, we have so many reports.
Yeah.
Can we do it today or tomorrow morning as well?
Yes, can we take some of them because the
very
reports
well,
are
very
many.
well.
Yes.
So, do you have the compliance reports that you have sent to the Commission?
Yes, sir, they are here.
Can we see the ones you've brought? The clerk of the Commission will come to assist you in relation to the documents you have brought.
Okay, we have reports of all the area councils, different years, the Kuntawur Area Council, Janjambure, Kanifing Municipal Council, Kerewan Area Council, Mansakonko Area Council, Banjul City Council, Birkama Area Council, and Basse Area Council.
Can we start, do we take them one at a time by councils? Very well. Yes, can you start with just one area council? Which one do you have on top? Yes.
Okay, that's the report for Banjul City Council.
How many reports?
These are 2 reports for the year. We have one report for the year 2020, the other one for the year 2019.
Can I please see them? Together with the envelope, if you can have the envelope, it's much more easier for records keeping. Let me first start with the one 2019, signed by Paul Mendy for the Director General. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So, Madam Chair, may I apply to tender the Gambia Public Procurement Authority report with respect to Banjul City Council, dated the 19th day of February 2021, for the years ended 2019, in evidence as an exhibit, and also the same Banjul City Area Council, dated the 25th day of October 2022, for the year ended 31st December 2020, in evidence as an exhibit.
Yes, no. The Gambia Public Procurement Authority compliance review for the year ended 31st of December 2019 and dated the 19th of February 2021, signed by Paul Mendy on behalf of the Director General, copied to the Lord Mayor of Banjul City Council, and the Gambia Public Procurement Authority compliance review for the year ended 31st of December 2020, dated the 25th of October 2022, signed by Momodou K. Jallo on behalf of the Director General and copied to the Lord Mayor of KMC. The first with reference GPPA /BCC /part 14/17/19 in brackets PM. And the second one dated the 25th of October 2022 with reference number GPPA /BCC /part 15 CAR volume 21/17/18 in brackets MKJ is hereby admitted in a bundle in evidence and marked as LGC /GPPA /BCC /003.
Ask the Commission, please.
Council, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If I may just come in here. We submitted, it should be 3 reports. It should be 2019, 2020, and 2021. It seems you only read 2019 and 2020.
We were only given 2, I think.
Yes, we were only given 2.
It should be 3.
Yes, we have only 2 here.
Can you please cross-check with the documents you have?
Council, we will stop at
Okay.
Can we see the copies, please?
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Jete, if the reports are not complete, we will adjourn till tomorrow so that you will put things together and we can all have them admitted in evidence and admit the rest of the documents. So we will adjourn today
Madam
so
Chair.
that you can put your house in order.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. At this point, we would...
I am thinking, if, Madam Chair, may we be guided. You've already admitted the 2. Would it be much more appropriate to just have it with the commissioner so that they can bring the extra one?
The extra one?
Yes,
Okay.
since you've already admitted them.
Yes, let us have the 2 that has been already admitted, and then when it comes tomorrow...
Yes, you can bring the additional
yes.
one. Yes.
2021.
So
This one.
we are grateful. The two
that we have, 2019
the
and
2 2019 and 2020, can you please hand it over to the commissioners? It has already been admitted in evidence, so...
Then we will continue from where we stop tomorrow to admit the further document.
We are grateful. We are grateful, Madam Chairman.
Yes, I should go through it. It has already been admitted. It's LGC /GPPA /B. Yes, okay. In a bundle. Thank you. At this point, we may rise and we expect you tomorrow here. Thank you so much.
What time?